male, they'll just laugh at you. I've tried, and they're like, shut up, you white idiot. You don't want to sit there and tell me, oh, yeah, right. They don't want to hear about it. They just want to feel like they're winners. Just like the yuppies want to feel like Romney's going to save them. It's just, it's fantasy world. I appreciate your call. We're going to come back with our guests, and we'll get to your calls before the show ends, those that are holding. People like Freedom Fighter in Texas and others. But it's delusion. People just want to believe they're winning. They just want to believe they're on the winning team. Yeah, I voted for Obama, they say, because you know why? You know, we're moving up in the world. Moving on up, moving on up. Oh, yeah, you're moving on up. Half your people are murdered before they're even born. And I'm just sick of it all. I mean, I think about it, it just makes me want to throw up. And then, you know, they're killing the black babies. They're hunting the white babies because people want them. Hunting them. Hunting them. I've been hunted at the hospital. Honey, will you take this downstairs to the nurse? First time, and I won't come back. My wife said, that lady was asking me how much money we got, if I'm nice to you, you know, if we're doing okay. And then put in the computer. And the next time I had a child, I said, you're putting that into a health department database with the CPS. She's like, yes. And why are you asking? You had this predatory look. And I said, you need to get that look off your face. I know you sit here and like a big spider prey on people all day. CPS is 5 times more like, I mean, you know, I don't play games with people anymore. You got all these spider people that serve the system because they think some black uniform is behind them. They got power. All you got's the cancer water you drink, scum. All right, a few weeks ago, we had him sit in as a guest host. He did a great job. I wanted to get him on for a little bit of this hour. Holland Vandennieuwenhof's the writer, one of the researchers on the amazing film that we sell. In fact, here it is right here. A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 95. And we warn of new false flags by this administration because the Justice Department, a lot of the folks in the Justice Department at that time in 95 are the ones that were all over and heavily involved in Oklahoma City. We have this from survivors, police officers, the inventor of the neutron bomb, the former head of Air Force Weapons Development, the late Hoppy Heidelberg. We have family members of the police officer, cop of the year, who was murdered for seeing the feds and carry out the attack. And he wouldn't shut up. It's an award-winning film available at InfoWarsShop.com. A Noble Lie, 1995. But the reason I've got him popping in is, you know, he's a former Marine himself and a researcher. And we have been saying, that's why I'm in the film, it's why I promoted it so much, is I said they're going to stage terror attacks, mass shootings, bombings. And I believe this is a lead-up. And now Obama's talking about executive orders to go after our guns. Holland Vandennieuwenhof is a native of Oklahoma, formerly served in the U.S. Marine as a rifle squad leader. His broadcasting career is in 2007 as Radio Free Oklahoma. He's now syndicated in different areas of the United States, and he joins us here today. Holland, first off, great job doing the show one day last week. I guess it was last Monday, wasn't it? And it's great to have you here with us. I haven't gotten your take on these latest shootings, but boy, it sure fits the mold of all the past operations. We got the president of the Sikh saying guys casing and all these witnesses saying 4 people shooting. You got the Southern Poverty Law Center all over it. We know most of these white supremacist groups are just filled with feds. Did they shoot one of their own patsies? Did a cop show up and shoot one of the operatives? All I know is that this is the season for them to pull this off with 5 bills introduced to ban all semi-autos in this country.
Well, there is no doubt that an agenda is at play. Gun control was dead before these mass shootings because of Fast and Furious, which is no longer in the headlines, which killed up to 2,000 people, which is by definition a false flag attack, inflicting a wound upon yourself or another person and blaming it on someone else to fulfill a political agenda. So we see what is happening. We can look in the past. We can look at the Oklahoma City bombing. Of course, in a Noble Lie, we examine that. Some of those same people are back in power, including Eric Holder, who was Assistant Attorney General of the United States in the cover-up of the Oklahoma City bombing. He's now Attorney General of the United States. He directly executed Fast and Furious and is now overseeing this new wave of gun crimes that just appeared out of nowhere, these mass shootings. And the funny thing is, when you look at these mass shootings, when you look at other mass shootings that happen across the nation, there's not this huge level of evidence of government involvement. These past 3 shootings, the Sikh shooting in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, the Aurora shooting and the Tucson shooting, have Black Ops fingerprints all over them. And when you look at other mass shootings in history, you don't see that. And we see the agenda they're pushing, which is gun control, which was dead before these attacks. And we can look in the past, how have they got gun control executed in other first world countries? In Britain, you have the Dunblane massacre at the primary school, where someone who was connected to a politically protected pedophile ring walked into a primary school and shot 16 grade schoolers and their teachers, killed them. And of course, the Firearms Amendment Act in Britain after that totally banned firearms. You had the Port Arthur massacre in Australia, which had Black Ops fingerprints all over it.
And the premier even said, we need a mass shooting to get their guns, and then it happened. And then we have Operation Gladio, where NATO and the Pentagon has been caught doing hundreds of these in Europe, including theater shootings. I mean, this is their specialty, to take liberties.
Exactly. At some point, they have to take the guns out of our hands. The agenda can only advance so far while we have the power to defend ourselves. And there's a very entrenched gun culture in this country, very entrenched, in contrast perhaps to Britain and Australia and other countries that have outright banned guns. Very strong. In fact, after the Aurora shooting, I believe Reuters showed that views on gun ownership had changed not at all.
Well, I mean, actually, some polls show people got more pro-gun, and gun sales doubled on top of even the previous record, yes. Yeah, all we've got left in American culture is basically the gun culture. It cuts across the lines. People are all buying guns. We're winning. They're losing. They're panicking.
Exactly. So maybe this formula isn't exactly working, because the response I see in my fellow countrymen in response to these attacks is, well, I need a gun. Well, I do live in Oklahoma, of course, which has the highest rate of gun ownership in the country. But I don't think it's quite working. So I wonder if they're going to have to change up the formula a little to try to affect change.
Absolutely. Let's come back and break down some of the anomalies and get into some of the other news with our guest, Holland Vandennieuwenhof. The film is A Noble Lie. We sell it discounted with a free citizen rulebook at InfoWarsShop.com or 888-253-3139.
We've got it.
Make no mistake, we are in an info war with vicious criminals who are only held back in their evil by what they can get away with. Now remember, it's now in the news. Like I told you last week, we had whistleblowers here in Austin. You notice it broke nationwide before I could collate it all, because there's so much, that the IRS, in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars per home. This is in the Associated Press. It's in Accounting Today, that in Austin, Texas, in 154 mailing addresses that were used 1,000 or more times, 10 individual addresses were used for 53,994 tax returns, resulting in the processing of $86.4 million. $86.4 million in 10 individual addresses. And that's exactly, but what you're not seeing in the news, because we haven't gotten our report out yet, because our whistleblowers are so scared. And it's like, this is other whistleblowers. The government, I guess, heard us talk about it, or it's come to a head. Look, the word is the mutiny is so bad here at the biggest IRS tax center in the country for 5 states, but also for other states, but everything for 5 states for the Occupational Federal Reserve and its collaborators. That's what it is. They brag they've conquered us. That's not me just saying we've been occupied. I mean, they say that, literally. That they've been told retroactively, even though the law doesn't say it, just start saying that retirees can't use their own pension money, and retroactively demand, after somebody's been retired, usually for about a decade, millions of dollars on hundreds of thousands they've pulled out of retirement with penalties and interest. They say over 70% of what they're taking is retirees' homes. And the worst thing that's crippling them is there's all this fraud with the tax ID numbers they're ordered to give illegals, selectively enforced, so they can do this as an incentive to come here, just like the free. I mean, I went, my finger basically chopped off once and couldn't get medical care, but the illegals were just going right in front of me. I had an insurance card, everything. They're like, you're scum, get back. Because it's all mandated to bring people in here to break down the country. And so there's scam on scam, and it's all being reported on by AP, WorldNet Daily, but it's a lot deeper. So I'm going to get the full report out in the next few days. And I'm trying to twist their arms into coming in here so we can black their faces out and, tell the story. And the reason I'm getting into this is the crime is so huge that it goes into what we learned a couple years ago. It was even in AP Bloomberg, that in '99, the top insurance company sat down with the Department of Defense and said, we'd like to keep the $1 trillion+ of death benefits. When you're in the military, they ask you, do you want part of your check taken out to be put in an extra life insurance policy? Well, all this money piled up since World War II right through current wars, they just don't give you that money. And they allow them to send something to your widow or widower saying, sign here, you'll get the money. And the fine print is they take your money. I mean, folks, these are criminals of the most hardcore type. And so the IRS is freaking out. It's so criminal that they know that when the illegals use your Social Security number, it's not just the tax ID, but that with another tax ID that doesn't match, they're able to set stuff up. They get tax returns, your accounts get seized, you get in trouble, and they're actually taking people's money of people they know are innocent. And that was what was finally too much. It's one thing to steal an old lady's house. They kind of like that, some of them. But it's another thing to know that it isn't even a retroactive tax deal. They give out the numbers, people run scams under your name, then they take your property. This criminal government wants to destroy this country. That's not just talk, that's happening. Going back to the maker, one of the writers and producers of the incredible film A Noble Lie, Holland Vandennieuwenhof. It's available at InfoWarsShop.com, as I mentioned. I bring this up in relation to the mass shootings. If you've got Operation Gladio, hundreds of mass shootings and bombings over Europe, 60s, 70s, 80s, by NATO, posing as political enemies they want to blame, Patsy's Framed, Fast and Furious, Gulf of Tonkin, Operation Ajax, Operation Northwoods, countless other events. And that these guys all have military psychiatrists and are in Army psyops. Let's talk about the last two shootings, what's happening here. But first, what do you make of the fact that the system is so incredibly off the chart evil? And what will they do next?
Well, it's chilling. They are cold-blooded. That cannot be denied. I mean, I have been, and all of us have been, of course you have been too, also hip deep in studying these deep state events for over a decade or more. And when it happens again and again and again, it's still shocking that they're willing to stoop to such level to advance a political agenda. But it cannot be denied. It cannot be denied at all. When you see these shootings with links to military intelligence, psychological warfare operations, Pentagon shrinks to DARPA super soldier programs. I mean, there's not a whole lot of people in this country that are involved in these types of programs, and they're all conducting mass shootings at a time when it's very politically convenient for them to be doing so. And you have the gag orders on the court documents. In fact, the Jared Lee Loughner case, the Tucson shooting, apparently he pled guilty, so there's going to be no examination of that evidence. People on the scene saw other shooters. There were more bullets fired than the magazine in his gun held. There were a lot of things about the Jared Lee Loughner case that are not going to be examined because there's not going to be a trial. We can fully expect the same with the Batman massacre, and with this shooting, the Sikh shooting, the perpetrator apparently, as last word, killed himself. So of course there's not going to be a trial. So you see just the media manipulating the story. No critical examination, no trial. I mean, not that the trial is going to achieve justice, but at least the evidence will be put forth through the gauntlet of some kind of examination, and it can be examined to see if it's true or not. We're not even going to get that. So we can only assume that these events are going to continue and get worse until they achieve their goal of removing guns from the hands of Americans. They've already stepped into a pool of blood with this. They've already killed dozens of people trying to do this for this one action. They're not going to stop. They may make it increase. And that's something I've said time and time again. One of the double-edged sword of this information war that we are winning is that as more people become awake and refuse to cooperate with these horrific agendas, the elite controllers or whoever they are, whatever you want to call them, they get desperate.
Well, they see it as stimuli. I mean, they write about false flag and army manuals. It's public. They have to give us the fear stimuli. They see this as cold-blooded science and we're lab rats. And you just have a drugged out patsy you roll in who can't even talk,